But the grumbling has already begun inside the Beltway about how he turned what seemed such a promising presidential year for the Democrats into a come-from-behind struggle against a relative political newcomer. But is Al Gore's political predicament really Al Gore's fault? For more on that, I'm joined by Bill Kristol, editor and publisher of the Weekly Standard, and a man who's heard some of the grumbling around town about Al Gore. Hi, Bill.
Hi, Brit.
So what are they saying?
Well, the liberal media has decided they're going to blame Al Gore for losing this election. And they're already turning on him a week before Election Day, and when he presumably still has a chance to win. I was on a panel this morning with a well-known liberal correspondent. I suppose I shouldn't mention his or her name, but they don't want to acknowledge that possibly the American people aren't fond of big government liberalism. They certainly don't want to acknowledge that the American people might not want to give Bill Clinton's vice president 4 years to succeed him. And so they're going to blame Gore personally for losing this election.
And what is the line of reasoning that says that he is the... I mean, there's certainly reason to believe that if a man goes into the debates ahead and comes out behind, that he may not be campaigning effectively.
No, and I think he hasn't probably been a super candidate. On the other hand, they won't acknowledge the obvious fact, which is that Bill Clinton had never met Monica Lewinsky, had never had the scandal break, had never been impeached. Gore would probably be 10 points ahead today. I don't think anyone really doubts that. Bush went ahead of Gore in 1998. No one knew who Governor George Bush of Texas was. What they knew was that he wasn't part of the Clinton-Gore team. He was the son of President Bush, who was an honorable man, and they wanted a change. And basically, Bush has led Gore for 22 of the last 24 months. What were the 6 weeks where Gore surged? When he picked Lieberman, an anti-Clinton Democrat, kissed his wife, and gave a speech in which he said, "I'm not running on the last 8 years. I'm running on my own, as my own man." Those were the 6 weeks that he was ahead. Then he started dissembling, exaggerating, and lying. It seemed Clintonian. He promptly sank back again. So I think Clinton is the one who's doomed Gore, whatever Gore's weaknesses as a candidate.
Now, what about the idea that you hear among some Democrats? I've certainly heard it from some sort of more centrist Democrats that Gore ran to his own left, that he campaigned as a populist who wants to fight for you against these terrible special interests in an era. What sounded to them like very old-style Democrats. They kind of think Bill Clinton never did and would never do, and that this is an important ingredient in his difficulties. What's your sense on that?
It might be true, though, again, empirically, his best few weeks were after he gave that kind of rabble-rousing convention speech. Maybe you can't sustain that message in this day and age, and Bush has done a good job of getting to the center and taking the edge off the issues where I think you could have scared people.
It also took Bush a while to begin the litany of government programs and that it was old-style liberalism. He really didn't do that at first, did he?
No, he didn't, and I think he made it a little bit more of an ideological race, and it allowed people to look up and see Gore and say, well, maybe a little more like Mondale Dukakis than like a New Democrat. I still think that actually pales, though, in comparison to the burden that Clinton has created for Gore, and I think that's something the Gore campaign believes.
Well, you know, my theory of presidential politics has always been that much as we love to cover them, and as interesting as we find them, that the campaigns are rarely decisive. It's always the conditions in the country, and you look at the conditions in the country, broadly speaking, they seem wonderful. And yet, there is the X factor. It's always been the Clinton scandals and what kind of a feeling they left and taste in the mouth of the electorate. And clearly Gore sensed that by the way he ran away from President Clinton. Now Clinton goes out. What effect in your judgment?
I think it hurts Gore. Now and I think the Gore campaign believes that. The liberal media are appalled that Gore hasn't used Clinton more. The liberal media has decided Clinton's a magician. Clinton should go and help Gore get elected to make the liberal media happy. I think the Gore campaign on this is right. Swing voters do not want 4 more years of Clinton-Gore. Again, Gore's best moment was when he said, "You're right, no 4 more years of Clinton-Gore. It's me and Lieberman. We're totally different." If it becomes Clinton-Gore, if this is a referendum on do we want 4 more years of Clinton-Gore, I think Gore loses badly. And it's interesting where they're sending Clinton. They're sending him to Kentucky and Louisiana, 2 states which Gore won't win, I believe. California, where presumably he's ahead and doesn't really need Clinton. And then Bill Clinton is going to spend Friday night and all of Saturday in Arkansas. 6 electoral votes.
Well, there is some trouble there, though.
Well, no, I think Bush is probably ahead there now, and that is a state which Clinton might be able, by appealing to pure kind of hometown pride, if they're proud of him, bring back to Gore. But it is pretty amazing that this master politician is spending over a day in a state with 6 electoral votes 3 days before Election Day.
Now let's talk for a minute about the other Clinton, Mrs. Clinton, who is ahead in one poll, but by a narrow margin. And behind in the other, the Zogby poll up there shows the race now 48-43 for Rick Lazio. The Quinnipiac poll just out today has her at 47-44, but that's down from 50. Lazio up a point. The analysis that came with the poll suggests that there's people are tending away from her toward the undecided category. Yeah, there you see the way it was. There you see it, and that's the way it was just a couple of weeks ago. So there's a real distinct drift away from her there. What's your sense of what will happen there, Bill, or is happening?
Well, there's clearly some movement away from Hillary Clinton and to Lazio. He's run a pretty effective, did pretty well in the last debate. Has good ads up, stressing the fact, a couple of issues, Israel. He's got an ad up with Rudy Giuliani in New York City, endorsing Lazio, praising him, and above all, reminding people he's from New York, he's worked for New York, he's going to continue to work for New York.
He said that from the earliest stages, and it didn't seem to work. I wonder if it's begun to, why it's begun to work, or if it's simply people are developing doubts about her.
I think it's maybe a little more doubts about her. She's been hurt by these associations with various extremists, probably hurt with Jewish voters in New York City. And I think the main thing that's happening is upstate voters are coming back to the Republicans, back to Lazio. He has pretty effective ads up upstate with local assemblymen saying, I know Rick Lazio, I've worked for him for years, he's one of us. And I think at the end of the day, people, Mrs. Clinton was dramatic when she came into the state. A lot of people were almost flattered that she was choosing to run from New York. It was exciting. And I think now it's become a little stale, and they're thinking, well, do we really want Hillary Clinton as our senator?
Now, is there an incumbency factor here affecting her? Not perhaps the same way that it affects Gore, but in the way that voters tend not to treat someone as an incumbent and the other is not, and the late stages of a campaign, if you're the incumbent, you got a problem if people are drifting away.
Yeah, I think so. She has to be considered the de facto incumbent. If she's below 50, she's in danger on Election Day. The other thing that I'm struck by about Hillary Clinton, her running is hurting Al Gore. I'm convinced of this. I mean, it sounds crazy. She's only running in one state, obviously. It's a state Gore's going to win. But I just think, again, voters want an end to the 8 years of the Clintons. And if Gore could stand up and say, it's over. It's over. It was fine. The economy was good. But I'm giving you a fresh start. I'm an experienced guy. I promise you prescription drug bills. No more of these guys. But, first of all, Clinton's showing up this last week, but then Mrs. Clinton's running for the Senate, and I think swing voters out there have the sense that they're never going to go away.
Bill Kristol, great stuff. Thanks very much. We have to take a quick break for the news, but when we return, find out what Monday night...